Hi, everyone. My name is Helen. I'm currently coping with serious emotional difficulties. My maternal instinct is tearing me apart because recently I gave my baby to other people. No, I'm not an alcoholic who had her baby taken away from her. My whole pregnancy was well planned. I was 23 and already had my own child. My son, Nick, was 5 years old, and he didn't have a father because his dad left me as soon as he found out that I was pregnant. My relationship with my parents was terrible because they were against me dating Nick's father in the first place. So I was alone with the baby. I had no education, no job, and I just lived on alimony, which was barely enough to rent an apartment. Then I took a desperate step. I heard from a friend of mine about an agency that was looking for surrogate mothers for people who couldn't have children. So I pulled myself together and called them. I passed the necessary tests and filled out a questionnaire. And then I began to wait and hope that one day I would get this life-saving call. And so it happened. I came to meet my, so to speak, employers. They were a pretty young and wealthy couple, Victor and Elsa. As I understood, Elsa could not get pregnant, but Victor was ready to spend absolutely any amount of money to have a child. They seemed to like me, and we discussed the financial aspect of our business. The amount they offered made my skin crawl. There were more zeros than I expected. For the better, of course. This generosity was contingent upon one condition. They wanted me to live with them during the pregnancy so they could make sure that I would do everything for the health of their child. Of course, I agreed almost without thinking because 9 months later, I could have started my life from scratch. I won't go into detail, but then there was a procedure that got me pregnant, and when the test confirmed everything, I packed up my stuff and took Nick to my parents. Oh, it wasn't easy for me to ask them for help, especially when it came to having Nick live with them for 9 months. But fortunately, they agreed. Then I moved into Victor and Elsa's house. Oh, it was a beautiful home with panoramic windows that led to the garden, and my room was just gorgeous. I even thought that these 9 months would be like a long vacation for me. But when I got to know the couple better, the whole situation got a little darker. We had an argument at dinner on the first day. It turned out that Victor and Elsa were raw food eaters. But when I asked them if they had any normal food, they gave me a whole lecture about how only raw foods retain vitamins and nutrients and all that. I tried to defend my point of view, but Victor ended up saying that they were paying me money and that I had to obey them. I had to become a raw food eater, too. But every day, I noticed more and more stupid ideas from this couple. I was bored and spent most of the day either reading books or texting with Nick. One day, Elsa burst into my room with wild eyes and took my phone away from me. She watched a documentary about the influence of radio waves and some other nonsense and decided that I should not have access to a phone as it could harm the child. This was complete anti-scientific nonsense. But if you think I'm just complaining, I have a lot more evidence that she's out of her mind. When I was about 3 months pregnant, Elsa gave me some strange news. A fortune teller was about to come visit us in the evening. I was like, what? A fortune teller? Did we live in the 15th century or something? It turned out that this was not a joke. Victor and Elsa asked me to just be patient and promised that everything would not last long. So we met this fortune teller. She lit her strange candles and picked up her rosary. This woman walked around me a few minutes muttering to herself and then asked me to take off my t-shirt so she could touch my belly. And it was the strangest thing I'd ever done. A weird woman was touching my tummy and mumbling something. I could barely stand not to scream. Then she put out the candles and said that she saw everything. The child's fate was just wonderful, and he had a great future ahead of him. She didn't know if he was going to be a banker or a lawyer, but he would have a lot of money. Victor and Elsa were almost jumping with happiness at that moment. Hell, these dumbasses didn't even realize that this child would be rich simply because he would get their money. This charlatan just deceived them. As you can imagine, it got harder and harder every week. The only thing that gave me strength was my son's phone calls. But Victor and Elsa restricted me even in this. As you remember, I didn't have a mobile phone, so every time I had to ask them to call my own son. Victor turned on the speakerphone and held the phone a meter away from me. It was just crazy, and I had no privacy. I really missed my son, and I only saw him a couple of times during my pregnancy. These control freaks just didn't want to let me go. Things were getting worse and worse. I already had a big belly, and I was experiencing all the difficulties that pregnant women face. And in addition, Victor and Elsa constantly bothered me with their delusional ideas. For example, after the 6th month, the three of us went to courses for pregnant women. The key word here is pregnant, but this crazy couple was with me the whole time. I felt terribly awkward and ashamed when we went to class. Imagine this picture: a crowd of pregnant women doing breathing exercises, and Victor and Elsa are breathing nervously next to each other. What a shame! But Elsa was still dissatisfied with my shape since I had gained weight. But I was just pregnant. She thought that I was hiding something in my room and that I was eating junk food in secret from them. One day she decided to install cameras in my room so that she could watch me at any moment. This wasn't just crazy. They were violating my privacy rights. But things remained stable. They were paying me money, and I had to accept any of their stupid decisions. These were all just examples of how I'd been living this whole time. But at the same time, there was a serious threat to my health and the health of the child. The thing is, I spent a lot of time with Victor. He had a free schedule, unlike Elsa. So it was him who always took me to the doctor several times a month. He went with me shopping and much more. And gradually, I began to notice that Elsa was jealous. She had a problem with not being able to have children. So when I came along and gave Victor what she couldn't, Elsa started seeing me as a rival. Of course, she never made any accusations against me, but I always heard her arguing with Victor. One day I was just passing by their room and I heard loud screams. Elsa insulted him and me and said that if her theory turns out to be correct, then both me and the child and Victor will suffer. I quickly went back to my room and couldn't sleep because I was scared. I knew she was really mad and that she was capable of doing anything to me. So for half of the pregnancy period, I was as careful as possible and tried not to even talk to Victor. It was for my own good. Time passed and soon I was going to have the baby. We discussed how the birth should go many times. It was supposed to be normal, hospital, midwives, and so on. But then Elsa read some article about how it's good for a baby to be birthed in water. I immediately said that this was not going to happen, and this provoked a new fight. But this time, I was not going to back down. I was willing to go to a pregnancy course or wait a few minutes while a fortune teller touched my stomach, but this was just crazy. I had this feeling they were just trying to kill me. At that moment, they retreated, and our argument ceased. But as it turns out, they did not give up on the idea. And I almost lost my life because of them. I was 9 months pregnant and we had a quiet dinner. But suddenly I felt a pain in my stomach. I remembered how I felt when I was pregnant with Nick, and I knew for sure that I had to go to the hospital. However, when I started sounding the alarm, Victor and Elsa weren't going to call the doctor. Conversely, they locked the doors and wanted me to go into the bathroom. I shouted and swore at them, but they were determined to detain me. I was in pain and I was scared, so I was acting crazy. I took a chair there and slammed it against a panoramic window, and it shattered. I ran out into the yard and started screaming for help. Thank God our neighbors were passing by our house, and they quickly called an ambulance, so I was safe. After that, I was taken to the hospital, and I finally completed my part of the contract. I heard a baby cry, and I cried with happiness. However, I couldn't even hold him in my arms. Victor and Elsa immediately took the baby away, and I was left alone with the doctors. When it was over and it was time to go home, I saw the child for the last time. He was beautiful, and I felt terrible giving him to these crazy people. However, Victor and Elsa were crazy with happiness and paid me a significant increase for all the inconvenience. I definitely didn't expect this from them. Now I have the opportunity to start living from scratch. The money I made is enough to move far away from my parents and send Nick to a good school. However, nothing will make up for the 9 months I lost, and nothing will fill the void I was left with after I gave Victor and Elsa the baby. But I will try to give all of my love to my son and make him the happiest little man on earth.